Mufasa the Lion King, Barry Jenkins' upcoming prequel to Jon Favreau's 2019 remake of the 1994 classic, posted its first trailer this past week, and while some thought it looked decent, most of YouTube demolished the trailer, arguably even more so than they did the remake itself. Some have said that it improves upon a few things from the remake, like a facial expression here and there, as if the remake didn't have any to offer, or even just the premise itself being an original premise. We'll get to my concern about that later, but most people just can't seem to get past the photorealism that they hated from the remake, while others say the premise itself sounds like a big budget straight to DVD sequel. Yeah, and Godfather 2 was meant to be a TV movie. I, as probably given by the fact that I'm making a whole video out of it, thought the trailer looked wonderful, but not for the reasons that a lot of people probably think. For those who have been following my channel since the golden years, the 2019 remake to this day stands as my favorite of the quote-unquote live-action remakes, and partially for that reason, as well as partially because of some artistically pleasing moments, I'm slightly more open to these photorealistic visuals, but apart from that, I wouldn't say my appreciation for the remake gives me as much of a bias as one may think. In fact, when I heard they were making a sequel, I kinda thought it was a dumb idea, given that doing sequels to these remakes is, at this point, an idea that really only worked once, most likely since the one sequel that worked pretty much had nowhere to go but up. However, around the time that Barry Jenkins got announced as the director, the premise of the story they came up with was released, and it went along the lines of Simba attempting to understand the sacrifices and philosophies of being a king, while Rafiki goes over the backstory of how his father became king. Again, a la Godfather Part 2. That premise immediately had me sold, but admittedly in hindsight, it probably would have been too much story for a film shorter than 3 hours, and most likely for the sake of its audience, had to be reduced to just Mufasa's backstory. But after lines from the remake like,
"I wouldn't dream of challenging you again,"
and
I guess even kings get scared, huh?
More than you could ever know.
And
"Long ago, you chose Mufasa over me."
the idea of doing a standalone prequel to it holds more than enough baggage. But what the trailer did for me, for one thing, was deliver a few lines that had me even more intrigued as I already was.
This story begins far beyond the mountains and the shadows. A lion was born without a drop of nobility in his blood.
So they're establishing that not only was Mufasa not even born in the Pride Lands, but also not even into royal blood, starting him off as a rogue agent, even more so than the son he would later on conceive. I'm extremely curious as to the direction they're going with this. Like, what will point A look like, and what does he go through to get to point B, where he's not only the king, but as I pointed out in the past, an extremely wise king that doesn't take ownership of his kingdom while still taking responsibility for it. It reminds me of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, where they not only show how President Snow became the snake we know him as, but also start him off as a likable individual, leaving us curious as to how he got from point A to point B. And if this film follows as smooth of a path as that film, or at least the book it was based on, it could be quite the journey. I'm also curious, an emotion that any good trailer should get out of its viewers, as to how much of an effect the drastic landscape changes will have on the story. Yes, there's African savannas and jungles, but there's also desert and Arctic landscapes as well. Based on that opening line from Rafiki, I'm guessing this may just be Mufasa's transitions from wherever he's from to the Pride Lands, but this shot of a drop of water in a desert has me curious as to if he's going to have an effect on more than just the Pride Lands. Like maybe his nobility and the philosophies he learns from his journey towards becoming king will have an effect far beyond the shadows. Depending on how it plays out, it'll either be an insane choice, a dumb choice with no effect on the plot, or, and my money's on this, an inspiring, passionate, and poetic choice that will have a grand emotional effect on the plot. My only complaint with the trailer is there seems to be some repeating put into play. I haven't heard very many people talk about it, so I may be shooting myself in the foot by pointing it out, but there's a bunch of scenes calling back to moments from the original and, in turn, the remake, including a stampede, a fight around fire, what looks like a song number involving a bunch of animals, and oh look, they even worked in the alligator fight from Lion King 2. Not that I didn't expect a prequel like this to have some callbacks, I mean, especially from Disney. I just hope they offer some bits of freshness alongside all that, kinda like the remake did. Shut up, yes it did. I guess what they might be going for is that Mufasa went through a lot of the same experiences that Simba went through, which does sound pretty poetic on paper, but especially with them putting Mufasa in a totally different starting point, it doesn't need to be the exact same experience. But then again, maybe that's just the circle of life. Overall though, the trailer looks fantastic to me. It launches an intriguing premise that just seems to keep getting better and better with more details that we gather. The visuals look artistically pleasing, even if it doesn't win non-fans of the remake over. The cast looks terrific, and of course, Disney's new Alan Menken is back. I would be lying if I didn't say that I was hoping that the trailer kinda sorta spelling out the premise for people would have won people over the same way that I was won over by that initial news announcement, but much like with the remake, I did have to remind myself that a perspective that's unique from everyone else's is what makes one's personality what it is. And much like with this 3-part series that I made a while back that you should check out if you haven't already, I just hope I illustrated that perspective effectively. Either way though, I think the trailer looks fantastic, and I'll most definitely be there opening day to see the sun rise high on this great and glorious kingdom.